Well, I'm back. I dropped off my load in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Monday morning. It was due, and then I've been sitting around. And Tulsa is kind of expediting Siberia, so I just got a load. I'll babble about it here if I get one or two people in Cowboy Church. Good. Alrighty. I drop off my load here in Tulsa Monday morning, first thing. They technically didn't open until 8, and I got it unloaded at 7. And I have been sitting at the Pilot Flying J this whole time. Still waiting. We hang out here for a minute. Pull out. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. You're lucky. I got a whole lot of nobody on here. Oh, I got one. Unfortunately, I'm driving in the middle of nowhere, so this might not last. I hope it does. Item I one, I dropped off my load in Tulsa on Monday morning, and I have been sitting there this whole time trying to get something out of here. And Tulsa is expediting Siberia. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in Tulsa except a whole bunch of vans waiting for something that's not going to appear. Joe Rogan. Hey, what's up? Rip Joe Rogan. Okay. So I just got a call, and I am deadheading straight out of Tulsa, straight north to a town called Nebraska City, Nebraska, which, again, not the Mecca, but there's a payload I'm picking up in the morning, 900 pounds. I don't really know anything about it, and I'm taking it to North Carolina. They want it there on Friday, but at the latest it'll be Thursday. And the only problem I may be running into is the size of it may knock my bunk out. So there's a slightest possibility I may have to get a hotel, or if I just marathon it there. It's a pretty good run. It's like 1,400 miles. We'll see how this plays out. I got to look at it, see how it fits in the back of the van. But right now I'm straight north on what is called 169, kind of in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. I'll be passing through Kansas, and then I'm going to end up in southern Nebraska. It looked, from what I could tell, it looks like it was straight south of Omaha. And I was able to talk to a few of the drivers sitting there at the Pilot. One lady was one of the drivers, had the exact same van. We were talking van stuff, and I don't even think she sleeps in her van. It's kind of weird. She gets hotel rooms, which I don't see how you make a living spending all your money on hotel rooms out here. It's absolutely ridiculous. Hi to everybody coming up here trying to read this. I've always had Universal Uno. You're here. That's cool. I'm having a hard time reading. I always do when the lighting is like this. I always pick a weird topic to go on. And when I was younger, I worked with a lot of old guys. When I say old guys, I mean people my age and older right now. And I would ask them about life experiences, things they did growing up that we wouldn't recognize today. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm the guy telling those stories at this point. And one of the guys, back when I think I was a teenager at the time. I don't remember who he was, but he was a boomer. And we worked together. And I asked him about, this, that, and the next thing. And he grew up in a town in New Jersey back in the 50s. He was a kid, 50s into the early 60s, which is, its own part of Americana. And I don't know what's going on in New Jersey today, but back then, people who lived in these little towns, your town was divided up ethnically. The Irish and the Jewish people in that neighborhood, and the Catholics were over there, and the Puerto Ricans were here, and the blacks were over there. It's just the whole neighborhoods were divided up by groups, which, nowadays everybody just kind of mixes and matches. And if you were to ask me, what are the ethnicity or religions of my neighbors, and I couldn't tell you. I don't have a clue. I don't even, nobody cares anymore. Back then, you had, like I said, the Catholics lived here and the Puerto Ricans lived there and everything. And he grew up in a neighborhood. And this is the era before the big box stores. So every neighborhood had little stores in it, a little mom and pop grocery store, and then you had the five and dime. Like think of Walmart. Half the store is food, the other half is everything but food. Well, the everything but food happened in the neighborhood. They had those little stores. In the 1950s, he said in their town they had two businesses that were the everything but food sellers, and they were side by side. And he said, you buy, clothes and pots and pans and silverware and, some tools and whatnot. Everything was for sale in these stores, but they were side by side and they kind of sold the same stuff, which was weird because they were in competition with each other. And you could kind of find the same stuff at both stores. And, even as a kid, he thought that was weird to have that kind of competition. But he said something that happened going back when he was a child. Apparently, these two businesses had been side by side since the end of World War II. And they were going at it, selling all this stuff. And he goes, it was just a thing we did. This is, before everybody had televisions in there. So the Saturday entertainment was to go to the spot, stand out in the street in front of these stores on Saturday, and they would open at 8 o'clock. And Saturday was the day they got something new, something different, something unusual would show up. And he said there'd be 60, 70 people standing out in front of these shops. And one of them would open his door, put up the open sign. He'd walk out, put a big sign in his window. And I'm just going to make up numbers because I don't know what the prices were back in the 50s, but a pair of shoes. And he would, some new style of shoe or something they got in inventory, and they would put them on display and then put the sign out. You sell them for $10. Well, the guy next door is buying the same products and selling the same products. And he said that he would come at it. A few minutes later, he'd open his door and put his, open sign out. And then he would walk over and look at the display in the guy next door, his window, and he would run in and put the same shoes for sale, but for $9. And everybody would just stand around the street. A little while later, the guy would come out and look around, or the first store, and he would notice that the guy next door had a sign, and he'd go read his sign, and he'd run in and he'd mark them down to $8. And time would go by, and everybody would stand there. And then the price went down to $7, or there was a threshold. It'd be like, let's say $6.75. The price is now $6.75. And then they would both be standing in front of the store. Whoa, is that a cop? That looks suspicious. Hold on a second. He said these guys would be standing out in front of the store, and they would get in an argument with each other about the prices of their products. And one guy's got it down to $7, and again he's $6.75, and then they would start yelling back and forth at each other. And he'd like, you can't sell that for $6.75. I know what you paid for those. And he goes, well, I'm just a better at buying product than you are. No, you're not. And then they scream and yell and holler and wave their arms in their air, and he would just say, oh, you're crazy. And the guy would stomp back in. So whoever had the last price, everybody would run into the store and basically wipe out their inventory of that type of shoe, because that was by far the best price, below retail prices of whatever the product was. He said this started in the 40s, and when he left in the early 60s, they were still doing that, these two guys. They did every weekend, every Saturday. Oh, let's go hang out in front of the stores, see what the product of the week is. And then one day, one of the guys died. They were, the age, the 60s, one of them died. And soon afterward, I mean, the guy's store obviously closed. He didn't have any employees. And soon after the other store closed, both went out of business. He was like, well, that's kind of weird. It turns out that both of these guys lived behind the business up on the second floor, and their business, their apartments or whatever you want to call them, houses were attached because they were brothers. And what they were doing was putting on a performance out front for the neighborhood, which the final price on the shoes or whatever had already been worked out in advance. The signs were all made in advance. They knew what they were going to do. And then when the price got down to the lowest dollar, and everybody would run in to buy them, all the shoes in store number 2 would get moved to store number 1. And then they'd go through the entire inventory. And then it was like, okay, next Saturday, let's see what we want to push, pots for a new frying pan or something. And so I looked at that and I was like, is it dishonest? Well, maybe a little, but it's really just sales. Oh, wow. Oh, this is going to slow things down a little bit. It's just a form of sales, convincing people what you have is what they need. Okay, I'm playing with my GPS here a little bit. 75. Gotta go around to Pico. All righty. Sorry, I'm playing with my GPS here. I'm kind of off the beaten path right now. Rude Motel, RUDD. And he told me about that. I just got a kick out of it. And Casey's. Yeah, when you're out here expediting, just remember there's going to be times when you can't get a load. And one of the ways to get the load gods to get you a load is get busy doing something. Go get your oil changed. Go throw your laundry in the washing machine. And as soon as the tub is full of water, they'll call you. I want you to pick something up 50 miles away 9 minutes from now. And best case scenario to get a load to magically appear, go get a hotel room, non-refundable. And as soon as you give them the money, they'll call. It's just one of those things. So since this is day 2, I called them this morning and I said, cast your net wide and get aggressive on the bidding. I need to get out of here. And they found this load in Nebraska. And the guy said, Lena, state line, 22 miles. There we go. He said he was going to give it to a broker up here. And then he remembered I'm the one jumping up and down and waving my arms in the air trying to get a load. So he called me and said, I can, get up there money and then run it to North Carolina. So I said, I'll take it. It gets me rolling. I can't stand sitting still. He started. That's J&S Machining Valve. See this thing on this place on the left, Machine and Valve Company? This is the kind of places I usually go. These little manufacturing firms out in the middle of nowhere. They just sit there quietly producing whatever product they put out. They ship out little bits and pieces. They don't ship out truckloads. That's where this van comes in handy. Sweetwater Virginia. Back up to speed. Gusty. We're back to scoot along. Out of Tulsa, heading towards Nebraska City, Nebraska, straight north here on a back road. So the GPS is taking me. But I like going on some of these back roads. You get to see parts of America you don't get to see very often. This is all farmland out here. I know you can't see left and right, but we've got basically open spaces. Got some cattle on one side. They need to mow the ditch. So we're in northern Oklahoma, maybe 20-ish miles from the Kansas border right now. Back up to speed. And when I say back up to speed, I mean 62. Yeah. Talked to another driver this morning. It was a woman who drove for another company, one of our competitors. And she has the exact same van I have. I asked her how fast she drove. And you're live. I don't know. All right. I keep losing my stream here. All right. I keep losing my stream here. I don't know why. If this goes out again, I'm going to go ahead and kill it. I can see cell towers, so I don't know why it's doing this. Anyway, this is what northern Oklahoma looks like, and this is going to be what Kansas looks like, and this is going to be what Nebraska looks like. This whole part of the country has this look to it if you're tuning in from outside the United States. This is just open farmland. There are places up here where you can walk for a half a day and not see another person. Central Wyoming is a place. The wife and I flew a helicopter from northern Wyoming down to Rawlins, which is along I-80 on the south side. We flew across the middle of the state, and there was nothing in the middle of Wyoming. There wasn't a tree, a fence post, a ditch, nothing. So we were contemplating if the engine quits and we have to land this helicopter, which way are we going to walk? Because there was nothing there. It was kind of surprising. But that was a big adventure we went on in 2018. We got sent on a plane. We flew to west part, Cody, Wyoming, and then we paid $150, I think, for a cab ride, 165 miles to a town called 10 Sleeps. It's got one stop sign. It's right up on the Idaho border. Pulled a Jet Ranger out of a hangar and flew the Jet Ranger helicopter all the way back to Houston, up over the Rockies and everything. It was an epic trip to go on. The only problem was the Jet Ranger is not the fastest helicopter in the world. So it was a slow trip, and there was no nav gear in the aircraft whatsoever. There wasn't a GPS. There weren't maps. There was nothing in the aircraft. And in my flying bag, I had an old GPS that I had forgotten I even owned, and I didn't remember how to use. So I had to sit there and play with it for a while to figure out how to program it. And I had to get grid coordinates because it was an old system. I had to get a bunch of grid coordinates to put in it to navigate our way home. But we made it. We came close to running out of gas one time, but we made it. Next town up here is Coffeyville. Looks like 15 miles to go. Speed limit 65 out here. I'm doing my usual 62. Alrighty. Just tuning in. This is en route from Tullsa, Oklahoma, going straight north on a back road to Nebraska City, Nebraska, which is south of Omaha. So this is northern Oklahoma, central, coming up on the Kansas border. This area looks like this. Oh, hey, why don't you pull out in front of me? Slowing down. They said if you're tuning in from overseas, this is what a lot of the central part of the United States looks like. The farmland here. This is very common. This is they call this state route or state road 169 is what I think this is. If you look to the left and right, you'll notice there's no trash anywhere because people take care of these areas. Right. Looks like this area is just for hay. So I see lots of hay bales rolled up in this field. So they're just letting it grow and just taking it, knocking it down. When I was a kid, they had hay bales. They were square. Now they're all these round rolling things. Just giant round balls. That must be the new technology. We, the wife and I flew the helicopter down and up over the mountains. The higher you get up in the mountains, the less power you have. And if you've ever driven a car at a high altitude, you'll know how that feels. Well, this helicopter was the same way. And the higher you fly, the higher the altitude, the less power, the less air for the rotor to grab, less air for the engine to breathe, and the aircraft starts running hotter and hotter, so you have to reduce the power that's already not producing. So you're kind of fighting a battle. Like I said, we flew across central Wyoming where there's nothing. We landed at the airport at Rawlins, which sits at 7,000 feet above sea level. We parked out on the ramp, took on a tank of fuel, fired up and went to take off, and I was pulling 100% power to hover taxi. I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So when a helicopter is hovering, your air all the way around the aircraft, the air goes down and out, and it circles back. Some of it circles back around. It goes back to the rotor system again, if that makes any sense. State line, 11 miles. So when you start to move in a direction, the air stops circulating around the front, and once you get up, it's called effective ETL, effective translational lift, where you kind of fly out of your rotor wash. And one of the advantages of that is once you get through it, you get an instant 20% boost in your lift. So I'm itching it along the ground, pulling all this power a foot off the ground, because the closer to the ground you are, the less power it takes. So I'm milking it across the ramp, and I feel it shake, and we go through the rotor wash, and the aircraft starts to climb. So then I pull back on it. Your max rate of climb at a jet range is about 60 knots. So I'm doing 60 knots. We take off and we start flying south, go over the highway, and we're heading towards the mountains, and we're only like 100 feet off the ground. And the ground's climbing and we're climbing at 60 knots. My wife looks over and goes, "Why are we slow to the ground?" I said, "This is it. We're climbing. This thing is climbing for all it's worth. I just can't get away from the terrain because the terrain's moving with us." And it took a while to get that little helicopter up to altitude, start flying along. But I remember the struggle. The struggle was real. That was a fun trip. I'm glad the wife and I got to do that. We took a bunch of pictures and stuff. Had fun. So we're 10 miles from the Kansas border. And of course, when we cross the border, you have to hump the horn, tradition and everything. This route right here may take us to Topeka, Kansas, which I have no memory of ever passing through there before. Great. Here. I have a grand total of nothing on the radio since I started driving. I'll go ahead and end this one.